How's it going, Paul?
Oh, great. This is a fantastic time to be a journalist.
It really, really is. And you're back in DC now, right in the center of it all.
I am. It's the center of the universe.
Yeah. Did you get a bunch of skiing in?
I did. A lot of cross country this year.
Yeah.
There was a lot of snow in Vermont, in Stowe.
Yeah. Did you left before all the wind started, right?
Right. And the rains and so forth. So we needed to get back to do a couple of things that were kind of important to do in town. So
yeah, good timing though, because I think I heard it was like -3 degrees on the mountains and stuff. Insane.
Yeah, that's fine. -3 degrees. Give me that.
You're stronger and braver than I, but
Yeah.
All right. Well, I can walk us through last week's headlines. Claire reported on a recent survey showing that most Americans are very uninformed about HPV. Kimron Rathmel wrote a column about colon cancer awareness and the importance of cancer awareness more broadly. We had a story about high school finalists of the Regeneron Science Talent Search, which features high schoolers' perspective on the current uncertainty facing oncology and science right now. We had a guest editorial by Michael P. Castro about the rising importance of biosimulation in treating patients, and a historical article documenting 50 years of history at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center. Sounds like maybe a short introduction, but it's because we're talking about two of the stories in depth this week. So we're going to be focusing on our lead story about the confirmation hearing for Jay Bhattacharya's nomination for director of NIH, as well as our now weekly roundup of everything happening in Washington right now. So yeah, pretty crazy.
Well, Jacquelyn, maybe we should begin with the Bhattacharya hearing. What was it like? How does it actually differ from the Kennedy hearing?
Yeah, I mean, in every way, basically. Bhattacharya was very level-headed in a time of a lot of chaos at RFK's hearing, and also just more broadly. He took questions from both sides of the aisle that were getting at some pretty controversial or high emotion subjects, like the mass firings, the caps on indirect costs, the funding freezes, all stuff that we've covered in recent weeks. And he responded with pretty reasonable answers. He did have 2 or 3 phrases that he leaned on quite heavily throughout the hearing that definitely helped his case in that way. I have them, they're in the story, but I'll read them out now. It's, I'm not involved, or I was not involved with the decisions of the NIH up until now. And if I'm confirmed, my commitment is to make sure that all scientists at the NIH and all scientists that receive funding from the NIH have the resources they need to do their life-saving research. And I could be wrong about this, but if I remember correctly from last week, I think he used that exact phrasing multiple times in the hearing. So he was prepared to be sort of this level-headed, calm voice amidst all the chaos. He also used this quote, I think 3 times, or something along the lines of this quote 3 times, that I don't believe that either the HHS secretary, RFK, or the president would ever ask me to do that. And that came in handy quite a few times. But the most notable, at least in my opinion, was when someone asked him if he would break the law if directed by President Trump. But I will say that he did. He said, I don't think Trump or RFK would ask me to do that. And Senator Hassan said that, that's a disappointing answer, and then goes on to ask him another question. But then I will say in his defense that he then uses his next answer. The first thing he says is that I will not break the law. So that could be sort of misleading that was his only answer. He did claim full on that he would not break the law.
I think the one aspect of his testimony that everybody is curious about is, what did he say about indirect costs specifically, and what specifically did he say about staff cuts?
Yeah. I mean, indirect costs, he had sort of what we talked about on the podcast a few weeks ago when we talked about indirect costs. He said that he doesn't really think that a whole new system is necessary. And he understands the value of indirect costs in general. I mean, the senator who asked the question, I forget off the top of my head now, but she brought up the fact that Stanford has indirect costs percentage at like more than 50%. So he himself has experienced the importance of indirect costs as a researcher. But he did say that, there's a need for more transparency, that people have mistrust as to where this money is going. He called it like just a tip on top of the research money through the grant. And he said that people need to know, where this money is going. So he called for audits on, again, where this money is going and increased transparency, which we've talked about it before, right, Paul, that's not many people are really fighting against that. That's not a bad idea.
No, it's not. And it's also a very old question, which has never been fully answered. Maybe it can't be. I don't know. Yeah. But it's, you open that Pandora's box and you're going to find all kinds of interesting things that are not going to be done. And I think that's kind of our job, is to look for those things.
Yeah.
So he did answer it in a way that was not doctrinaire. What about staff cuts?
Yeah, staff cuts. If I remember correctly, he basically said that, he did lean on his, phrases that he used. He said that he was not involved with the staff cut decisions that Elon Musk and Doge have really orchestrated. But he did say that he doesn't have any intention of making further cuts or staff cuts, and he would review these, the cuts that have already happened once he likely gets confirmed. He also did use his other sort of stock answer, saying that he wants his commitment is to the mission of NIH, and he wants there to be adequate staff and adequate funding so that the mission of the NIH can continue.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing that absolutely scares everyone right now is that the mission of the NIH will not continue, and that at least some of the money will end up being administered, doled out, and block grants. So, which would require Congress to go along with all of that. Actually, even the indirect costs matter would require Congress to get involved. So, who knows? But the interesting thing is that what I'm hearing you say is that there was a note of sobriety or sort of good measure and not necessarily ideological zeal.
Yeah.
In what you heard.
Yeah, he walked the line, he again used these phrases to sort of distance himself from the craziness happening with Musk and Trump and RFK. But every time he actually spoke about it, he was very in support of their, make America healthy again, focus on chronic diseases. He honestly made their, goals seem more level-headed just by talking about them in the way that he did.
There are ways, and there are ways to do all of these things very smartly.
Yeah.
And there are people who could very, in a reliable way, guide him through it. So he sounds like he might be the person who would be asking for advice from the right people.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll see. We'll see if it gets confirmed too, so.
No, I think that's done.
I would agree, but technically not until Wednesday.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, maybe we should talk for a moment about a press release that dropped on the NIH website on Thursday evening, circa 4 or 5 o'clock. Well, we were able to manage getting it into the cancer letter, but there was a very interesting issue involving how grants at NIH are reviewed. Yeah. Maybe we should talk about that a bit.
Yeah, please tell me about it, Paul. I mean, you covered it. We saw it. We have some experience covering things at the last minute, especially Thursday evenings, but this one we had to get in.
Well, to me, the question is, why wasn't it Friday evening? I know. Because if you really want to bury something, you bury it on Friday evening. But I don't know where that advice comes from. But I also have no earthly idea where that policy change came from. Yeah. Because it clearly isn't Bhattacharya because he's not in place. And here is NIH announcing really a hugely important change in how grants are reviewed. throughout NIH without the NIH director present. And I must add that I follow this stuff pretty closely, as do you. I've never heard of that one.
Yeah.
But that one, let me just get to that, is the vast majority of grant applications, et cetera, go through centralized review at NIH. So CSR, Center for Scientific Review. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't have the exact numbers. I think it's 80 some percent. And a small percentage goes through the institutes and centers. Yeah. And now they're going to route everything through the institutes and, away from the institutes and centers and into the centralized CSR review. Sounds benign, could be benign. The only question that I keep hearing people ask is, what does it do with spore grants or the cancer center grants? Do they kind of go into the common pot, or should they go through NCI? We'll see. Maybe they will make exceptions. It could be a very interesting question of why it's happening, how it happened, or even really whether it's actually happening.
Yeah.
Because nobody knows how that. I mean, there could be people who know, but I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
About how this thing materialized.
Yeah. Yeah. So weird. I'm really eager to see how that plays out, because I remember reading that section that you wrote on, I guess, Thursday night or Friday morning. And I was like, what does this mean? And it's like, we don't know yet. Yeah.
I have no clue.
Yeah.
But it is something that will not, this is not the last time we're writing about it. It's probably it is the first time for sure.
Yeah.
So, but it's, there are people losing sleep over this at cancer centers, and spores, but then again, they aren't sleeping anyway very much at the moment. So it's, lose a little more sleep. Who cares? It's marginal.
Oh my God, that's so sad. Oh my gosh. Well, I think the last thing that we wanted to talk about today was the Richardson waiver, which is another thing that's sort of changing before Bhattacharya comes in. Do you want me to dive into that a little bit, Paul?
Yeah, a little bit. Can you kind of read that, what it does?
Yeah. Well, I'll explain. The Richardson waiver is a Nixon-era policy circa 1971 that was intended to enhance the transparency of rules and regulations related to public property, loans, grants, benefits, or contracts. HHS used it to err on the side of making things more public, more transparent. And now, right before Bhattacharya's likely confirmation, HHS has rescinded this waiver. So the new policy says, and I'll read it verbatim, the extra statutory obligations of the Richardson waiver impose costs on the department and the public, are contrary to the efficient operation of the department, and impede the department's flexibility to adapt quickly to legal and policy mandates. Effective immediately, the Richardson waiver is rescinded and is no longer the policy of the department. So intense just by itself, and also quite hard to reconcile with Bhattacharya saying, that transparency is probably his number one thing that he brought up throughout the hearing.
Well, yeah, I don't know if he even knew about this.
Oh, no, he didn't. He didn't. Senator...
He had no idea?
Yeah, I know. Senator Andy Kim of Massachusetts asked him if he knew about it, and he literally just did not know. He was not aware of this.
Well, let's go back a moment here. Let's take a little pause to appreciate the irony of the situation. This is 1971, the Nixon administration's transparency action. Okay? The Nixon administration was not known for transparency, at least not voluntarily. Yeah. But here's something that the Nixon administration said, that as part of good governing and good policy at HHS, we are going to go above and beyond the requirements of the Administrative Procedure Act. Yeah. So, and make this thing, this stuff available. And so It's interesting that NCI doesn't use a whole lot of this, NIH also, but FDA does, CMS does. Yeah. And then NCI as well, probably some. It's hard to figure out.
Yeah.
It's not immediately obvious, but basically, without the Richardson waiver, we're not going to know about a lot of things that are going to be done.
Yeah. Public comment periods are basically, they don't have to happen anymore. Is that correct?
Yeah, rulemaking changes. It becomes more streamlined. Things run on time.
Yeah. Well...
Or not.
Or not. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we covered a lot of ground here. Is there anything else you want to bring up from last week? I think this was a really good conversation.
Well, I think we covered a lot. It's I keep repeating this, and somebody should hit me over the head if I say it again, but I'll say it again anyway. This is a great time to be a journalist. Maybe I should say it in unison.
That was what I was trying to do, but we'll do that. Okay. I don't know how it worked on Riverside.
Let's try it again. Let's give it another try. 1, 2, 3. This is a great time
to be a journalist.
We can do better than that, to be a journalist.
We did our best.
Well, see you next week. We'll try it again.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on the Cancer Letter podcast, where we explore the stories shaping the future of oncology. For more in-depth reporting and analysis, visit us at cancerletter.com. With over 200 site license subscriptions, you may already have access through your workplace. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. Together, we'll keep the conversation going.
Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and thank you for listening.